In a distant corner of the galaxy, far beyond the reach of human exploration, an advanced alien species known as the Veil had spent centuries studying life forms across countless planets. Their mission was simple, yet profound: to understand the predators that roamed the universe. These creatures came in all shapes and sizes, some with razor-sharp claws, others with venomous bites, and a few capable of devouring entire ecosystems. But no matter how deadly these beings were, none fascinated the Veil more than humans. The Veil had observed humanity for decades, cataloging their behaviors, their strengths, and their weaknesses. Humans were fragile compared to many of the galaxy's apex hunters. They lacked natural armor, sharp teeth, or heightened senses. Yet there was something about them that intrigued the Veil, a quiet unpredictability that made them stand out. Among all the humans they had studied, one individual caught their attention more than any other. His name was Ethan Cole. Ethan lived in a small coastal town on Earth, a place where the ocean met the land in a constant dance of waves and wind. He wasn't particularly remarkable at first glance. He was of average height, with dark hair streaked with gray from years under the sun. His hands were calloused from work, and his clothes were plain, chosen for practicality rather than style. But what set Ethan apart was not his appearance, it was his demeanor. He carried himself with a calmness that seemed almost unnatural. Whether he was fixing a broken fence or fishing off the pier, he moved with purpose, never rushed, never panicked. Kale and Nira, two Veil scientists stationed aboard their orbital observation platform, found themselves drawn to Ethan's daily routine. The platform hovered invisibly above Earth, equipped with technology so advanced it could monitor even the smallest details of human life without detection. Through their screens they watched as Ethan went about his days, seemingly oblivious to the cosmic eyes tracking his every move. "He doesn't rely on others," Kale noted one day, his voice tinged with curiosity. "Most humans form groups, build communities. Even when they hunt or fight, they do it together. This one, he acts alone." Nira tilted her head, her large, luminous eyes fixed on the screen. "Perhaps that is why he interests us. Solitude can breed resilience. When you have no backup, you must become your own strength." Their fascination grew when something unusual happened. One morning, Ethan received a message that would change everything. It came from overseas, delivered by a courier who arrived at his doorstep just as the sun began to rise. The envelope contained a single sheet of paper, its contents brief but urgent. Ethan's younger sister, Rachel, had gone missing while traveling through a remote region. Local authorities had dismissed her disappearance as an accident, suggesting she might have gotten lost or fallen victim to the harsh environment. But Ethan knew better. Rachel was resourceful, careful, and smart. She wouldn't vanish without a trace unless something or someone had taken her. Ethan read the letter twice, his expression unreadable. Then, without hesitation, he folded it neatly and placed it in his pocket. He spent the rest of the day preparing for a journey. He packed light, a sturdy backpack containing a map, a knife, a water bottle, and a few basic supplies. There were no tearful goodbyes, no dramatic speeches. By evening he was gone, leaving behind the only home he'd ever known. The Veil followed his progress closely. They tracked him as he boarded a plane, then a bus, and finally a rickety old truck that took him to the edge of civilization. From there, Ethan entered a dense jungle, a place where modern technology faltered and nature ruled supreme. Communication, signals failed, and the air buzzed with the sounds of unseen creatures. To most, this would have been daunting, even terrifying. But Ethan didn't flinch. He moved with steady determination, his steps measured and precise. Kale and Nira marveled at his adaptability. "Watch how he navigates," Nira said, pointing to the screen. "He avoids obstacles effortlessly. He knows exactly where to step, where to pause. It's as if he's done this before." "He has," Kale replied. "His file shows he spent years working in similar environments. But still, look at him now. No fear, no hesitation. Most humans would panic in such isolation." As Ethan ventured deeper into the jungle. The Veil noticed something else. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. He used vines to create makeshift shelters, identified edible plants with ease, and fashioned tools from whatever materials he could find. At night, he slept lightly, always alert for danger. Once, a large snake slithered past his campsite, its scales glinting in the moonlight. Ethan woke instantly, his hand reaching for the knife at his side, but instead of attacking, he simply waited, letting the creature pass without incident. The Veil recorded the moment, noting how he conserved his energy, choosing restraint over recklessness. Days turned into weeks. Ethan's path led him to the remnants of illegal mining operations scattered throughout the jungle. Rusty machinery lay abandoned, half buried in mud and overgrown with vegetation. Here, he found evidence of a struggle. Footprints, broken branches, and scraps of fabric torn from clothing. Among the debris, he discovered a small piece of cloth bearing Rachel's initials. It was proof she had been here, but it also suggested she hadn't left willingly. Despite the grim discovery, Ethan's expression remained unchanged. He tucked the fabric into his pocket and continued onward, his resolve unwavering. The Veil couldn't help but admire his focus. Humans are emotional creatures, Kyle mused. They feel anger, fear, sorrow. Yet this one, he feels, but he doesn't let it control him. It's more than that, Nira added. He channels those emotions into action. He uses them to fuel his determination. That's what makes him dangerous. As Ethan disappeared into the shadows of the jungle, the Veil prepared to document the next phase of his journey. They didn't know what awaited him deeper in the wilderness, but one thing was certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Ethan Cole would face them with the same calm efficiency that had already captured their attention. And perhaps in doing so, he would reveal even more about the enigma that was humanity. Ethan's journey into the jungle grew more challenging with each passing day. The dense canopy above blocked out much of the sunlight, leaving the forest floor dim and damp. Thick vines tangled around tree trunks, and the air was heavy with the scent of earth and decay. Despite the harsh conditions, Ethan moved forward without pause. His steps were careful but steady, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of danger or clues about Rachel's whereabouts. The Veil continued to observe him closely from their orbital station. Kale and Nira took turns monitoring his progress, their curiosity deepening with every step he took. "Look at how he uses the environment," Nira said one afternoon as Ethan paused near a stream. He crouched low, examining the water's edge. Tiny footprints marked the muddy bank, too small to belong to a human but clear enough to suggest movement. Ethan studied them for a moment before straightening up and moving on. "He's tracking something," Kale noted. "But what?" Nira adjusted the screen to zoom in on the area Ethan had just left. "It could be an animal, or it could be whoever took his sister. Either way, he's not letting anything slip past him." Ethan's instincts proved sharp. Later that day, he came across a narrow trail winding through the underbrush. It was faint, barely visible, but it was there. Broken twigs and flattened leaves hinted at recent passage. Ethan followed it cautiously, his knife gripped firmly in one hand. The trail led him to a clearing where remnants of a campfire still smoldered. Ashes lay scattered around the site and discarded food wrappers littered the ground. Kale leaned closer to the monitor. "This isn't natural. Someone was here, and recently." Nira nodded. "Humans leave traces like this, but these aren't ordinary humans. Look at the weapons, they're advanced. Whoever they are, they're well equipped." Ethan knelt beside the fire pit, running his fingers through the ashes. They were cold now, but not old. Whoever had been here hadn't left long ago. He stood up and scanned the clearing, his gaze landing on a cluster of bushes nearby. Something glinted among the leaves, a piece of metal reflecting the faint light filtering through the trees. Carefully, Ethan approached and pulled it free. It was part of a broken device, likely used for communication. He turned it over in his hands, studying it intently before slipping it into his pocket. The Veil watched as Ethan pressed on, following the trail deeper into the jungle. They noticed how he adapted to the changing terrain. When the path became steep and rocky, he climbed with precision, testing each foothold before committing his weight. When the vegetation grew thicker, he used his knife to cut away obstacles, always mindful not to make too much noise. Every action was deliberate, calculated. There was no wasted effort, no unnecessary risk. As night fell, Ethan found a spot to rest. He chose a hollow between two large roots, partially concealed by hanging vines. Using leaves and branches, he constructed a makeshift shelter to shield himself from the elements. Then he settled in, his back against the tree trunk. Though he appeared relaxed, his senses remained alert. The jungle was alive with sounds. The chirping of insects, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of birds, but Ethan listened beyond them, attuned to anything out of place. Hours passed. Just as the moon reached its peak, a soft crunch broke the silence. Ethan's eyes snapped open. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Somewhere in the darkness, something, or someone, was approaching. Slowly, he reached for his knife, gripping it tightly. The sound came again, closer this time. A shadow shifted among the trees, barely visible in the dim light. Ethan waited until the figure stepped into the clearing. It was a man, dressed in dark clothing and carrying a rifle slung across his back. His movements were cautious, almost furtive. He scanned the area, his gaze lingering on Ethan's shelter. For a moment, it seemed he might pass by unnoticed, but then his boot caught on a root, sending a sharp snap echoing through the night. In an instant, Ethan sprang into action. He lunged from his hiding spot, tackling the man to the ground. The rifle clattered away, skittering across the dirt. The man struggled, throwing punches and trying to break free, but Ethan's grip was unrelenting. With a swift motion, Ethan disarmed him, pinning him down with a knee to the chest. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, his voice low but firm. "What are you doing here?" The man hesitated, his eyes wide with fear. I'm just looking for supplies," he stammered. "I got separated from my group." Ethan studied him carefully, searching for any sign of deception. "Your group? Who are they?" The man swallowed hard. "Mercenaries. We're working for a company. They sent us to retrieve something." "What kind of something?" Ethan pressed. Before the man could answer, a shout rang out from the trees. More figures emerged, armed and ready. Ethan's captive seized the opportunity to wriggle free, scrambling to his feet and disappearing into the shadows. Ethan didn't pursue him. Instead, he melted back into the jungle, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. The mercenaries searched the area but found no trace of him. Frustrated, they regrouped and continued their mission, unaware that Ethan was watching them from a safe distance. Hidden among the foliage, he observed their movements, noting their numbers and equipment. They were well-trained, disciplined, and dangerous. But they also made mistakes, small ones, easy to miss unless you knew what to look for. "They're hunting him now," Cale remarked as the mercenaries spread out, clearly intent on finding Ethan. "Do you think he realizes?" Naira shook her head. "He doesn't need to realize. He already knows. Watch." Sure enough, Ethan began to counter their efforts with remarkable efficiency. He moved silently, using the jungle to his advantage. When one mercenary stopped to check a suspicious noise, Ethan looped a vine around his ankle and yanked him off balance, sending him tumbling into the underbrush. Another wandered too close to a patch of loose soil. Ethan triggered a minor landslide, forcing the man to retreat. Each tactic was simple yet effective, designed to confuse and delay rather than harm. By dawn, the mercenaries were growing restless. Their leader, a woman named Lila Cross, called them together. "We can't keep chasing ghosts," she snapped. "Find him, now." Ethan, perched high in a tree overlooking their camp, heard every word. He remained still, blending seamlessly with the branches. His expression was calm, almost serene, despite the danger surrounding him. The Veil couldn't help but marvel at his composure, He's outnumbered and outgunned, Kale said. Yet he acts as if he has the upper hand. That's because he does, Naira replied. He understands the jungle better than they do, and he knows exactly how to use it. As the sun rose higher, Ethan descended from his perch and slipped away once more. The mercenaries resumed their search, but they were no match for his skill and determination. One by one he picked them off, not with violence, but with strategy. By the time Lila realized what was happening, only a handful of her team remained. He's dismantling them, Kyle whispered, his tone filled with awe, without firing a single shot. Nira nodded. And he's doing it alone. No backup, no reinforcements, just him. Ethan's actions spoke volumes about his character. He wasn't driven by anger or revenge, though those emotions surely burned within him. Instead, he was motivated by a singular purpose, to find Rachel and bring her home. Every step he took, every decision he made was guided by that goal. To the Veil, this focus was both fascinating and terrifying. Humans, they realized, were capable of extraordinary things when pushed to their limits. As the day wore on, Ethan closed in on the mercenaries' base of operations. From his vantage point, he could see the outline of a compound nestled in the mountains. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons at the ready. Inside, he knew, Rachel was being held. The final stage of his mission was about to begin. Ethan crouched low in the bushes, his eyes fixed on the compound ahead. The mercenaries' base was a sprawling structure carved into the side of a mountain, its walls reinforced with metal and stone. Guards moved along the perimeter in pairs, their rifles slung over their shoulders but ready to be used at a moment's notice. Spotlights swept across the area, illuminating patches of ground before plunging them back into shadow. It was a fortress designed to keep people out, and to keep others trapped inside. The Veil watched from their orbital station, their screens showing every detail of the scene below. Kale leaned forward, his voice tinged with anticipation. This is where it gets complicated. He's outnumbered, outgunned, and now he's facing a heavily fortified position. What can one man do against all that? Nira didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was locked on Ethan, who remained perfectly still despite the chaos around him. Watch, she said simply. He'll find a way. Ethan studied the compound carefully, noting the guards' patterns, the blind spots between the spotlights, and the weak points in the wall. His mind worked quickly, piecing together a plan. This wasn't reckless bravery. It was calculated precision. He knew he couldn't take on the entire group head-on, so he focused on creating opportunities instead. Opportunities to confuse, distract, and dismantle. As night fell, the jungle grew darker, the only light coming from the compound itself. Ethan moved silently, staying close to the shadows. He approached a small generator tucked away behind a cluster of trees. It hummed softly, powering the spotlights and other equipment. With practiced ease, he disabled it, plunging part of the compound into darkness. Alarms blared instantly, and the guards scrambled to investigate. Inside the control room, Lila Cross cursed under her breath as she monitored the situation. Someone's out there, she muttered, pacing back and forth. Find them. Ethan used the commotion to his advantage. While the guards were distracted, he slipped closer to the compound, scaling a section of the wall where the lights had failed. He moved like a ghost, his footsteps silent on the cold metal surface. Once inside, he pressed himself against the wall, waiting for a patrol to pass before continuing. The interior of the compound was a maze of corridors and rooms, each one guarded or monitored. Ethan avoided the main pathways, sticking to maintenance, tunnels, and service areas. He found what he was looking for in a storage room, a pile of spare parts and tools. Using these, he fashioned a series of small devices, crude but effective. They weren't weapons, not exactly, more like distractions, things that would create noise, smoke, or sparks when triggered. One by one, Ethan planted the devices throughout the compound. Each was set to go off at different intervals, ensuring the mercenaries would remain disoriented and divided. As the first explosion rocked the building, sending a plume of smoke into the air, The guards rushed toward the source. Ethan took advantage of the confusion to move deeper into the facility, his focus unwavering. Meanwhile, Rachel sat in a small cell at the far end of the compound. She had been held there for days, her captors interrogating her about the artifacts she had discovered during her travels. Though exhausted and frightened, she refused to give them any information. She trusted that Ethan would come for her. He always did. And sure enough, as the alarms continued to blare and the mercenaries scrambled to regain control, she heard a faint scraping sound outside her door. The lock clicked open, and Ethan stepped inside. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rachel let out a shaky laugh, tears welling up in her eyes. "I knew you'd find me," she whispered. "Did you doubt it?" Ethan replied, his tone light but his expression serious. "Can you walk?" Rachel nodded and stood, wincing slightly as she put weight on her injured leg. Ethan supported her as they made their way back through the compound, retracing his earlier path. The mercenaries were too busy dealing with the chaos Ethan had created to notice them slipping away. Back in the control room, Lila Cross was losing patience. "What is going on out there?" she demanded, slamming her fist against the console. One of her men rushed in, his face pale. "Ma'am, we've lost contact with several teams. And someone's sabotaging the equipment." Lila's jaw tightened. Who? Who could possibly be doing this? Before anyone could answer, another explosion shook the compound, this one closer to the control room. The lights flickered, then went out completely. In the sudden darkness, Ethan appeared, stepping through the doorway with Rachel beside him. Lila spun around, her hand reaching for her weapon, but Ethan was faster. He disarmed her with a single fluid motion, pinning her against the wall. "You're done," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Tell your people to stand down." Lila hesitated, her eyes narrowing. "You think you've won? You're just one man." "And yet here I am," Ethan replied. "Tell them to stop or things will get worse." Realizing she had no choice, Lila complied. Over the intercom, she ordered her remaining forces to cease resistance. The mercenaries, already shaken by the relentless attacks, obeyed without question. Within minutes, the compound fell silent. Ethan led Rachel outside, guiding her toward the edge of the jungle. The Veil observed the scene with a mixture of awe and admiration. "He did it," Kale said, his voice filled with disbelief. Against all odds, he dismantled an entire operation, alone. "He didn't just dismantle it," Nira added. "He turned their own strength against them. Their numbers, their weapons, their defenses. They meant nothing compared to his determination." As Ethan disappeared into the trees with Rachel, the Veil began compiling their findings. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A human operating at peak efficiency, driven by purpose and unshakable resolve. Ethan Cole had proven that even without backup, a single individual could achieve the impossible. But the Veil also knew this was only part of the story. Humanity was full of contradictions, capable of both incredible kindness and devastating cruelty. Ethan's actions raised new questions about the nature of humans as predators. Were they truly dangerous because of their adaptability and ingenuity? Or was there something deeper, something harder to define? For now, the Veil decided to continue, observing. They had much to learn, and Ethan's journey had only scratched the surface of what humanity was capable of. As the screens showed Ethan and Rachel making their way back toward civilization, Kale and Nira exchanged a glance. "This changes everything," Kale said quietly. "If humans are this unpredictable, this resilient, we may have underestimated them." Nira nodded. "And if we've underestimated them, then perhaps others have too. Let's see how far this goes." Far below, Ethan walked steadily through the jungle, his sister leaning on him for support. He didn't know he was being watched, nor did he care. His mission was complete, and that was all that mattered. The Veil recorded every step, every word, every moment of quiet triumph. To them, Ethan represented something rare and remarkable, a predator, unlike any other in the galaxy. Ethan and Rachel moved through the jungle, their pace slow but steady. Rachel's injured leg made it difficult for her to walk long distances, so Ethan supported her as best he could. He carried most of their supplies, ensuring she had enough energy to keep going. The journey was grueling, but neither of them complained. They were focused on one thing: getting home. The Veil continued to monitor their progress from their orbital station. Kale and Nira watched intently, their fascination with Ethan growing stronger with each passing day. "He's still calm," Kale observed. "Even after everything he's been through, he hasn't lost his composure." Nira nodded. "It's not just calmness, it's control. He knows exactly what he's doing every step of the way, and he's making sure his sister stays safe." As they traveled, Ethan kept a close eye on their surroundings. The mercenaries' defeat had weakened their operation, but he knew there could still be stragglers or reinforcements nearby. He avoided main trails, sticking to narrow paths and dense underbrush where they were less likely to be seen. At night, he built small fires hidden beneath thick canopies, using them only briefly to warm food or dry clothes before extinguishing them completely. Rachel noticed how methodical he was, how every action seemed purposeful. "You've done this before, haven't you?" she asked one evening as they rested by a stream. "This isn't the first time you've been in a situation like this." Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Not exactly like this, no. But I've learned a few things over the years." She studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I'm glad you're my brother." Ethan didn't respond, but his grip on her arm tightened slightly, a silent acknowledgement of her words. For all his calmness, there was warmth in his actions, a quiet protectiveness that spoke volumes. Days turned into weeks as they pushed deeper into the jungle. The terrain became rougher, the air thicker with humidity. Insects buzzed incessantly, and the heat pressed down on them like a heavy blanket. Despite the challenges, Ethan remained undeterred. He navigated rivers swollen with rainwater, scaled cliffs slick with moss, and found shelter in caves when storms rolled in. Each obstacle was met with the same level-headed determination. Back aboard their station, Kale and Nira debated the implications of what they were witnessing. "Humans are adaptable, yes," Kale said, "but this is something else entirely. He's not just surviving, he's thriving, even in conditions that would break most beings." "Thriving might be too strong a word," Nira countered. "He's enduring. That's different. Endurance is about pushing forward despite pain, fear, exhaustion. It's about refusing to give up no matter what." Kyle tilted his head thoughtfully. "And yet, isn't that what makes predators truly dangerous? Not their strength or speed, but their will to survive?" Nira didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her attention back to the screen, watching as Ethan helped Rachel cross a shallow but swift-moving river. He held her hand firmly, guiding her step by step until they reached the other side. Once there, he checked her leg again, applying fresh bandages from his dwindling supply of materials. "They're running out of resources," Kyle noted. "Food, water, medicine. They'll need to find more soon." "They will," Nira replied confidently. "He'll make sure of it." Sure enough, Ethan began altering their route to include areas where he knew they could find sustenance. He led them to fruit-bearing trees, freshwater streams, and patches of edible plants. When hunting became necessary, he fashioned snares, from vines and branches catching small animals for food. Every meal was shared equally between him and Rachel, though she often tried to insist he take more. "He's selfless," Kale remarked. "Even when he's in charge, he doesn't prioritize himself." "It's not selflessness," Nira corrected. "It's strategy. If she collapses, he fails. Keeping her alive is part of his plan." Their journey took them closer to civilization, though it remained elusive. One afternoon, as they climbed a ridge overlooking a wide valley, Ethan spotted smoke rising in the distance. A settlement. It wasn't much, just a cluster of makeshift huts surrounded by fields. But it was a sign of human presence. He adjusted their course, heading toward it with renewed urgency. When they arrived, the villagers greeted them cautiously. Ethan explained their situation in simple terms, avoiding details that might raise suspicion. The villagers offered them food and shelter. Grateful for the company after weeks of isolation, Ethan accepted their hospitality but stayed alert, always aware of potential threats. During their stay, Rachel recovered some of her strength. She began helping the villagers with chores, earning their trust and gratitude. Ethan, meanwhile, spent his time repairing tools and reinforcing structures, contributing in ways that didn't draw attention to his skills. To the villagers, he was just another traveler passing through. But to the Veil, he was proof of humanity's resilience. He blends in effortlessly, Kale said. Even among strangers, he adapts. It's survival, Nira replied. Humans are social creatures. They rely on connections to thrive, but watch how he maintains distance. He's friendly, but not overly so. He gives just enough to gain trust without revealing too much. After several days, Ethan decided it was time to move on. The villagers bid them farewell, offering supplies for their journey. As they left, Rachel looked back at the settlement, her expression thoughtful. They were kind to us, she said. I hope we see them again someday. We might, Ethan replied, but we have a long way to go yet. The road ahead was uncertain, but Ethan's resolve never wavered. He guided Rachel through forests, across plains, and over mountains, always moving closer to home. Along the way, they encountered others, some helpful, others hostile. Ethan dealt with each encounter in his own way, using diplomacy when possible and force only when necessary. His calm demeanor disarmed many who might otherwise have posed a threat. By the time they reached the outskirts of their coastal town, Rachel was nearly fully recovered. She walked beside Ethan, her steps confident and steady. The sight of familiar landmarks brought tears to her eyes, but she blinked them away, smiling instead. We made it, she said softly. Ethan nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. We did. The Veil watched as they entered the town, blending seamlessly into the crowd. To the townsfolk, they were simply two people returning home. But to Kale and Naira, they represented something extraordinary. Humanity's unpredictability, adaptability, and sheer will to survive had been laid bare before them. This changes our understanding of humans, Kale said finally. They're not just fragile beings reliant on technology or alliances. They're capable of incredible feats when pushed to their limits. Naira agreed. And Ethan Cole is proof of that. He faced overwhelming odds, alone, and succeeded. Imagine what an entire group of humans could achieve if they worked together with that same focus and determination. As Ethan and Rachel disappeared into the bustle of the town, the Veil recorded their final observations. Their mission had begun as a study of predators across the galaxy, but it had evolved into something far greater. Humans, they realized, were unlike any species they had encountered. They were complex, contradictory, and endlessly fascinating. For now, the Veil decided to continue their observations. There was still much to learn about humanity, and Ethan Cole had only scratched the surface. Ethan and Rachel settled back into their small coastal town, resuming the quiet rhythm of life they had known before her disappearance. To the townsfolk, their return was a welcome relief, a story of survival against the odds that sparked conversations over coffee and meals. But for Ethan, life didn't feel entirely normal. The jungle, the mercenaries, the compound, they lingered in his mind like shadows he couldn't quite shake. He carried on with his daily routines, fixing fences, fishing off the pier, and helping neighbors. But there was a weight to his calmness now, a quiet awareness that the world was far more complex than it appeared. The Veil, meanwhile, continued their observations from their orbital station. Kyle and Nira had spent countless hours analyzing every detail of Ethan's journey, piecing together what they had learned about humanity. He's remarkable, Kyle said one day, his voice tinged with admiration. But is he unique, or are all humans capable of such feats? Naira studied the screen where Ethan could be seen walking along the beach at sunset. I think the answer lies somewhere in between. Humans have potential, great potential, but not all of them tap into it. Something drives them to act, to push beyond their limits. For Ethan, it was his sister. Cale nodded thoughtfully. And without that drive, they might never reach their full capability. Rachel noticed changes in her brother, too. Though he rarely spoke about what had happened, she could see it in the way he moved, the way he looked at things, as if he were always scanning, always prepared. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, she finally asked him about it. "Do you ever think about going back?" she said softly. "Not to the jungle, but to do something else. Something bigger." Ethan turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Why would I do that?" "Because you're good at it," she replied. "You saved me. You stopped those people from using the artifacts. They were dangerous, Ethan. You did something important. Don't you want to keep doing that?" He was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's not about wanting," he said finally. "It's about needing. I went because you needed me. That's enough." Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but stopped herself. She realized then that Ethan wasn't motivated by a desire for recognition or purpose. He acted because it was necessary, because someone had to. And perhaps that was what made him so extraordinary. The Veil watched as days turned into weeks, then months. Ethan's life seemed ordinary on the surface, but beneath it lay a depth of resilience and adaptability that fascinated Cale and Naira. They began to wonder how many others like him existed, humans who operated quietly, unnoticed, yet capable of incredible things when called upon. One day, an unexpected event drew their attention. A massive storm swept through the region, bringing torrential rain and fierce winds. The town's defenses were overwhelmed, and within hours floodwaters surged through the streets. People scrambled to save what they could, but panic quickly spread. Amid the chaos, Ethan sprang into action. He organized rescue efforts, directing neighbors to higher ground and helping those trapped in their homes. When the old bridge collapsed, cutting off access to part of the town, Ethan swam across the raging river with a rope tied around his waist, securing it so others could follow safely. His movements were precise, his decisions swift. Even as exhaustion crept in, he pushed forward, refusing to stop until everyone was safe. Cale and Naira observed the scene with growing awe. "This is it," Naira said. "This is humanity at its core. Under pressure, they don't just survive, they protect, they sacrifice." And yet, Kyle added, they don't see themselves as heroes. Look at him. He's exhausted, soaked, but he keeps moving like it's nothing. When the storm finally passed, the town was battered but intact, thanks largely to Ethan's leadership. The townsfolk praised him, calling him brave and selfless, but Ethan shrugged off their gratitude. "Anyone would have done the same," he said simply. Rachel knew better. She caught his arm as he walked past her later that day. "You're wrong," she told him firmly. "Not everyone would have done what you did. You're special, Ethan, whether you want to admit it or not." He met her gaze for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that we're okay." Back aboard their station, the Veil finalized their report. They titled it The Paradox of Humanity, documenting everything they had learned about Ethan Cole and the species he represented. Their conclusion was clear. Humans were predators unlike any other. Fragile individually, yet collectively formidable. Capable of both destruction and compassion. Driven by emotion, but guided by reason. Most importantly, they adapted, not just to their environments, but to the challenges placed before them. "What do we do now?" Cale asked as they prepared to send their findings to the Veil Council. "Do we continue studying them?" Naira nodded. "We must. There's still so much we don't understand. Ethan has shown us only one side of humanity. Imagine what we might discover if we look deeper." As the Veil transmitted their report, Ethan returned to his quiet life, unaware that he had become the subject of galactic study. He fished, repaired fences, and helped his neighbors rebuild after the storm. To him, none of it was extraordinary. It was simply what needed to be done. Yet, in the vast expanse of the galaxy, Ethan's actions resonated far beyond his small corner of Earth. The Veil had underestimated humanity once, dismissing them as fragile and insignificant. Now they saw them differently, as unpredictable, adaptable, and dangerously capable. And though Ethan would never know it, his calm determination had left an indelible mark on the universe. Years later, when the Veil encountered other human settlements scattered across the stars, they approached with caution. They remembered Ethan Cole, the man who had faced overwhelming odds alone, who had dismantled a powerful operation with nothing but his wits and resolve. And they wondered, how many others like him were out there? Far below, on a quiet coastal town, Ethan sat on his porch watching the sun dip below the horizon. Life was simple again, peaceful even. But deep down, he knew that simplicity was deceptive. The world was vast, unpredictable, and often cruel. Yet he also knew this. When the need arose, he and others like him would rise to meet it, calmly, steadily, and without hesitation.